everyone. Hello. Welcome back to our live stream. This is Shweta Garg, an image transformation expert and a founder of Dream Image Consulting and Behavioral Training Institute. I welcome you all to this live session. Let's wait for people to join in for just 1 or 2 minutes. So till the time people join in, I'll just give you brief about what are these live sessions all about. So these live sessions we conduct every alternate week, wherein the blogs that we have on our website, which is www.dreamimage.in, DREAMIMAGE, dreamimage.in. So there are few blogs and we receive questions from our readers, from our audience. So that's the purpose of these live sessions, which we planned to address the questions that we get on a few of the blogs on the topics that are there on the website. So let's start with our session today. So today we are going to talk about our blog, Storytelling, a Powerful Tool. Now, when I say storytelling, storytelling is an ancient practice in our culture. It is an art form that has been captivated our ancestors, and it continued to allure the minds of all generations. So in that sense, storytelling comes very natural to human beings. In my blog on my website, I have talked about storytelling, that it can be an effective tool in building the image of your brand. And I've got some interesting questions from you all, and through this Q&A round I will take up some of those questions and address some basic queries that people have asked me related to storytelling and marketing. Before we start, if you haven't read my blog, you can read on the link given in the description that I'm just going to put there. So let me just put the link. One second. Okay. So this is the link you can see on the description. You can go there and read the blog. Now we have few of the questions that is there with me. Let's start with our first question. Our first question that we have received is, how can I be sure that my story would be interesting to my customers? Now, this is very valid questions, because this is there in our mind that the story that I'm telling, are people thinking, is it made up or is it interesting to them? Are they interested to listen to it? So understand, when we talk about storytelling, that does not mean that you have to bring your customers to tears, right? It's not always about emotion, yes, about emotions, but getting emotional, right? It's about connecting with your customers emotion that they experience. Now emotions can be excitement, hope, joy, fun, surprise, yes, getting into tears, that is also emotion. So it can be anything. So you have to think on how to tell a story which makes them laugh, or probably their day is not going good and suddenly your story brightens their day. So basically, when you focus on connecting emotionally with your customer, then you will never fail. Your story will be interesting to your customer. And in today's world, where there's a lot of competition, everyone wants to be ahead of everyone, right? How can we do that? This will only happen if you have a deeper, better understanding of your potential customer, and if you have a deeper and better relationship with your customer. So yes, effective storytelling is the key, and your customer will be interested in your story always. We move on to our next question. What, according to you, are the elements of a good brand story? Okay. Now you know what? I would not quote it as good or bad, because every user, every reader, every listener or customer, they have their own different opinion about it. Some might find it good, some might find it bad, but for a great storytelling experience for both reader and the teller, one should keep few things in mind. What are those? First, your story should be engaging and entertaining. So when I talk about great stories, that means great stories always keep the listener or reader or your customer engaged, involved, and interested in what's coming next. Second is convincing. Now, great stories will convince the reader, convince your listener, convince your customer, and make it easy to trust and believable. What's the third thing? Informative. If I talk about great stories, they will spur that inquisitiveness and increase or add to the listener's knowledge, your customer's knowledge, whatever you're telling them. Next is associated. That means your story, that great story, make people think of the people and places they know. While you're telling them a story, they will start thinking about those places and the people, or those incidences, those circumstances when they were into that moment. So they can easily relate to it, associate to it. Next is structured. Great stories follow a structure, a brief and clearly expressed structure, where everything is not in jargons, not very complex. This helps convey your core message, your core value, and also it helps people to absorb it easily. And the last is unforgettable. When you have to tell great story, that means at that moment when you're taking care of all these things, so that story will stick in people's mind, and this happens when you connect with their emotions. So it's not about good or bad, because I said that everybody has their own different opinion. So it's about great story, and if you keep these 6 things in mind, you will never fail. Let's move on to our next question. Our next question is, do I always have to be honest when I'm telling the story of my brand, or can I make up things to captivate the attention of my audience? Okay, I always advise that keep it real, keep it authentic. When it comes to storytelling, fake it till you make it does not work at all. Seriously, it will not work. You would never want your story to sound like made up, or and that cliche description that your customers, listener, or readers can totally get that, okay, fine, this is fabricated. No. So therefore, make sure that you work on a fresh idea and exclusive perspective to tell your own story, and that is inspired by you, your own self, not by others. Because audience is very smart, your customer is very smart, your reader is very smart. They will know the difference, that they will know that, oh, this idea is not unique, this is not your idea. Along with that, use your voice and tone, your tonality, to set yourself apart from your competition. So while you're taking care of these things, what you're doing is you are reflecting your authentic self. You are true to your brand values and principle. So when you're telling the story, talk about your struggles, talk about your failures, talk about your successes. That's when your customer, your reader, your listener will be a part of your story. Right? We move on to our next question. People these days have very short attention span, as our generation has grown up to reels. Okay, How can I shorten the length of my brand story without cutting on its essence? Okay, I would say generation of reel or not, your story anyways should not be as long as a movie where people are just waiting for the end to come, thinking that probably, in the end, I will understand what happened in the first half, because I didn't understand the first half at all. Right? So it should not be that long. It's not about that today generation is about reels. Anyways, it should be crisp, short, brief. In fact, in marketing, storytelling does not work if it is not brief and it is not to the point. And you're not, if you're distracting, deviating from the point, it is not effective. Always remember the purpose. You want to keep your customer, listener, reader engaged and not lose interest, right? So keep the unnecessary details, boring plot points out of the way. Your story, should make them feel something. You should leave them with a thought. They should start putting themselves in the shoes of the character of your story and start imagining how your service and product will help them, right? So it has to be crisp, brief, to the point. Obviously, you should not miss out the important points, but leave the unnecessary details and boring points out. Keep them out, right? So let's move on to the next question. I really like the idea of using storytelling to market my business. Okay. So after reading your blog, I could recall how many brands use this tactic. Yes. But it is really hard to structure a story that can grab the attention of masses at large. Can you guide me how to go about it? Yes, it is hard to structure a story. It is, believe me. But quite easy if you keep in mind few things. First, understand that the sequence of events that you want to share is the structure of your storytelling. For example, let's talk about my blog, right? Now, obviously, a blog on the website will have a lot of writing. The content is in writing, right? So there are some 500 characters that you have to put on the website in a blog, and few of the characters you want to portray in your blog, then will it work if I do not focus on putting those characters that my audience can relate to? No, I will lose them. I will lose my audience. Also, if I don't form a flow of events, a natural flow of events, then I will leave my readers confused, and that's what I don't want. Another example can be a website. Now, website has a lot of pages, right? We have home, about us, then services, contact us. There are many sections to it. Let's say if I want to tell a story of my business, I'll put an about us page, right? So while designing the about us page, if I don't break it into segments, then my website visitors will not stick around. They will miss on to the useful information which is there ahead on the page, because after reading one paragraph they'll move on. They will leave my website and move on and search for something else, right? So see, it's not always to put everything in sequential order, but there are many ways. Nevertheless, always remember that your story should have a beginning, middle, and end. We all are familiar with this. We have been listening stories from our grandparents, our mother. As a parent, we are telling stories to our children. So every story has a beginning, middle, and end, right? So make your audience more comfortable, open to new information. Sometimes in our story, we want to share data, facts, figures. Do not start with that. We human beings, understand, love humor, excitement, journeys. So your beginning has to be exciting, and then in the middle come two facts that we want to get across, That's how you have to structure your story. Start with the story, start with the journey, start with excitement, start with humor, get people hooked to your story. Your talk, your story can even, bring life to a dry subject also. So this is how you have to structure your story. Let's move on to our next question. Can a story overshadow the product or the brand? Can it happen that people remember the character or the message of the story rather than focusing on the product? Um, no, it will not happen. See, your story will never overshadow the product or brand. There is a lot of noise out there, right? When you are telling your story, your customer, your listeners and readers, they're also distracted. We are human beings, we cannot focus for that long. So if someone is telling us a story, somewhere we are distracted also. That's why the biggest challenge is to tell our story in such a way that it is actually heard. In addition to that, there's a lot of competition out there. That's why, we all are struggling. What should be my structure of the story? How should I make it interesting? How should my readers or my customer be engaged in my story? But the most important thing is, in order to rise above the competition, is to know your customer. For that, what you have to do, dig deep inside, conduct surveys, listen to the pain points, take feedback of your current customers, and after understanding all this, after reviewing all this, tell stories in a way that communicate what all of your potential customers are secretly thinking. Then only your customer will resonate with your story. See, understand what happens. We have so many things in our mind, we have so much to share, and that makes our message very complex. But when we tell stories that simplify that complex message, right, that make people understand the concept in a better way. Take an example of Apple. They use real life stories, and by using real life stories, they've been able to describe exactly how their products benefit users, right? So your story will never overshadow the product or brand. Okay, so let's move to our next question. I have a B2B business where I manufacture tires, right? How can I use storytelling to market my business? Okay, so we have spoken about storytelling, that it should be interesting, it should be entertaining, it should be engaging, connecting with customers' emotions. In addition to that, you can also create suspense. We all like mystery. You can make your customer curious. Before the launch, create mystery and surprise your customer. It is a great way to pull potential customer in. Another way is add details that bring your story to life. That means you have to show, don't just tell them. Show, don't tell. Because sometimes people believe when they are seeing it, when they're showing them. Like we talk, no? Children learn when they see their parents doing it. So same way, show, don't tell. Like you mentioned that you are into manufacturing of tires, right? Say your company is launching a new product, a tire with a unique technology and a new feature. So in your story, you can share details about the moment your team came up with the idea, uh, because this is more exciting than telling your customer that, oh, you are about to release the best new product. No, or we are coming up with a new product. Don't do that. You have to talk about the roadblocks. You have to talk about the small successes, that small wins that led up to this launch. What happens that this way your audience feel like they are part of your process, right? So we move on to our next question. It is said that a good story should have an emotional appeal. But when we are integrating our product in a story, there is a tendency to list out as many facts as possible. How to curb that tendency? Okay, see, probably this might sound contradictory to what we have been talking about all this while, because like I said, storytelling should be connecting with your audience emotion, your customers' emotion, but along with that, it does not mean that you completely ignore the facts, completely ignore the data. I have mentioned that earlier also in one of the questions, that when you use storytelling to connect with audience does not mean you completely ignore the facts and figures. So it's just that you are sharing the data, facts and research with a narrative around it, right? You are not just throwing a list of facts on your listeners, on your readers or customers, that this is the facts, this is the figure, this is the research. No. Beginning, middle and end. Remember, with exciting beginning, you have hooked them with the compelling beginning. Now, middle, it's not a bad idea to share the facts and figures. This adds credibility. This makes people, think that, okay, it looks exciting, it looks credible, it sounds authentic. So if I'm your customer, probably I'll start thinking, let me give your product or service a chance, let me just go ahead and buy it, or let me just invest in this because I am convinced. So you can put fair facts and figure, but first work on hooking up your customers or your readers, convince them so that they are interested, they are curious to know what is coming up next, right? Okay, let's move to our next question. Does the kind of product dictate how much choice we have to experiment with the story? Manufactures cosmetics, and I get very similar ideas from my creative team on how to market the products. Okay, so if your question is about that, it's it depends on the product, that what kind of story or what experiment you can do with the story. No, it does not. See, the kind of business you are into, the kind of product you are into, it has no relation with this experimenting with the story. It's irrelevant. It does not depend on that at all. It is a very common myth. People think that, oh, my product is not where I can share a story. No, it's not that. You have to mainly focus on crafting a narrative, description, a story, keeping in mind how your product or service can benefit your customer. Work on how will you tell the story. Be extremely careful how it is crafted. Avoid jargons, cliches, and complex words. These are to name a few. So, not at all. It's not that, oh, you're into cosmetics, so you will get creative ideas to share your story or to market the products by narrating a story. No, anyone, any kind of business, any kind of product can market their products by storytelling. So I hope I answered your question, and this was the last question of today. Thank you, all my readers, for giving so much love. I hope that these sessions are helpful to you. Keep on sending these questions to us so that we can address and we can take care of these and we can answer your queries and give more clarifications. Stay tuned. We will be coming up with more of these sessions in future, and you will get updates on our Facebook page, Instagram page, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thank you so much for being there. Bye bye. Take care.